My husband said, "I'm taking the kids to live with my girlfriend." I looked at him, calm in a way that even surprised me, and said, "Good luck." Then I called his parole officer. I'm 35, sitting in my lawyer's office right now, hands folded in my lap while he finishes reviewing emergency custody paperwork. My children are at my mother's house, safe, confused, but holding it together better than most adults would. Their father is in county lockup. Let me tell you how we got here. 2 nights ago, Thursday evening, I came home from work and found suitcases lined up in the hallway. Not mine. The kids. Their clothes. Their favorite toys. Tablets wrapped carefully in chargers like someone had planned this for a while. My daughter, 7, and my son, 5, were sitting on the couch, cartoons playing too loud, their eyes darting every time they heard a zipper. My husband walked out of our bedroom dragging another suitcase. Didn't look at me. "We need to talk," he said, like this was a scheduling issue. "I'm done pretending this works. She and I are getting a place together. I'm taking the kids." She. The friend from the gym. The one whose messages he hid. The one he said was just helping him stay motivated. The one he always seemed to be with during night classes that never produced credits. "Where?" I asked. My voice didn't shake. My hands did, just slightly, so I folded them behind my back. "Her cousin has a rental. Good schools." "Where?" I repeated. He rolled his eyes. "Does it matter? About 4 hours north, across the state line." That was when my stomach dropped. Not from heartbreak, but from realization. "When are you leaving?" "Tonight. She's picking us up in an hour." I looked at my children. They were pretending not to listen, pretending this wasn't their whole world cracking open. "Good luck," I said. He stared at me, offended. "That's it?" "What do you want me to say?" I asked quietly. "You've made your choice. I thought you'd fight for your family." My family? He was leaving me for another woman and trying to take my children across state lines while on parole. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I walked into my home office, closed the door, picked up my phone, and made the call that changed everything. We didn't start like this. When I met him, he was charming in a grounded, steady way, not loud, not flashy. The kind of man who showed up when he said he would, who listened more than he talked, who made you feel chosen simply by staying. I was drawn to that stability. After years of building my own life, career, routines, independence, I wanted partnership, not fireworks. We built something that looked solid from the outside, a house with creaky stairs, morning chaos with mismatched socks, weekend grocery runs where he complained about prices and I teased him for forgetting the list, 2 kids who filled every corner with noise and crumbs and fingerprints. I believed in us. When he got into legal trouble 18 months ago, I didn't hesitate. Prescription fraud, a felony. He insisted it was a mistake, a bad decision fueled by stress, pressure, ego. I didn't excuse it, but I stood by him. I paid for a good lawyer, sat through hearings, learned the language of probation and parole conditions, structured our life around his check-ins, his restrictions, his fresh start. I drove him to meetings, adjusted my work schedule, took on more at home so he could keep stable employment, one of the conditions of staying out of prison. He didn't cry about it. He wasn't dramatic. Men like him rarely are. He got quiet instead, withdrawn, defensive when questioned, proud enough to resent help, but dependent enough to accept it. I told myself it was temporary. The gym came later. He said he needed structure, a routine, something to rebuild confidence. I supported that too. Bought him new shoes, helped with schedules so he could go in the evenings. That's where she came in. At first, she was just a name mentioned in passing, a workout partner, someone who pushed him harder on leg days, someone who got it. When I asked questions, his answers were short but smooth. Nothing emotional, nothing suspicious on the surface. I noticed the phone habits before I noticed the lies. Screens angled away, notifications muted, text deleted to save storage. He said I was being paranoid when I asked. Said parole stress was making him feel monitored enough already. So I backed off, because that's what women like me do. We give space when we're told we're crowding. We believe restraint is strength. We trust consistency over instinct. But looking back, the cracks were there. The missed dinners, the excuses that didn't quite line up, The way he started talking about starting fresh without ever saying with me. The way he'd stand in the doorway of the kids' room a second too long, like he was imagining a different version of their lives. I didn't know he was planning to leave. I didn't know he was planning to take them. I didn't know he thought rules didn't apply to him anymore. What I did know, deep down, in that quiet place I'd been ignoring, was that something had shifted. Not love breaking, entitlement growing. And when he rolled that suitcase into the hallway, when he spoke about leaving the state like it was a weekend trip, I finally understood. This wasn't impulse. This was a man who believed the world would move out of his way because it always had. He forgot one thing. I'd been the one holding it together the entire time. After he announced he was leaving, the house didn't explode into chaos the way movies make it seem. It went quiet. Too quiet. The kids stayed glued to the couch, eyes fixed on cartoons they weren't really watching. Their bodies were still, but their shoulders were tense, like they were bracing for something loud to happen. I could hear my own breathing, slow, controlled, while inside my heart was thudding hard enough to feel in my throat. He moved around the house with purpose, confidence, zipping bags, checking his phone, acting like this was a transition he had every right to manage. That confidence was the first real warning sign. Not guilt, not hesitation, certainty. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be," he said when he noticed me watching him. "I'm not," I replied. He scoffed. "You always do this. Silent treatment, acting like I'm the bad guy." I looked at him then, really looked. This was a man on parole, a man whose freedom depended on rules he'd signed his name under. Monthly check-ins, no leaving the state without written permission, stable residence, stable employment, no risks. And here he was, planning to cross state lines with our children like it was nothing more than a change of scenery. "Have you thought this through?" I asked quietly. He waved a hand. "She loves me. She loves the kids. We'll be a real family." A real family. As if the one standing in front of him was imaginary. "And your obligations?" I asked. "Your parole conditions?" He rolled his eyes. "I'll transfer supervision, or get permission after. My officer likes me." That entitlement made my skin go cold. Men like him don't rage when they feel cornered. They dismiss. They minimize. They assume charm will carry them through. "You need written permission to leave the state," I said evenly. "It's only a few hours away," he snapped. "Stop trying to control me." Control. That word always comes out when accountability is too close. A car horn sounded outside, sharp, impatient. He smiled. "That's her." I watched through the window as her vehicle idled at the curb. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't beg. I didn't cry. I helped him load the bags. That was the moment he thought he'd won. He introduced me to her in the driveway like this was a normal exchange between adults. She barely met my eyes. She shook my hand. Awkward. Rushed. "No hard feelings," he said. "Just how things work out sometimes." "Sure," I replied. "Good luck." The kids hugged me, confused, clinging longer than usual. My daughter whispered, "Why aren't you coming?" "I'll see you soon," I told her, kissing her hair. "I promise." Promises matter to me. They drove away. I stood in the driveway until the sound faded, until the street looked ordinary again. Then I went inside, closed the door, and sat at the kitchen table without moving. I waited exactly 30 minutes. Enough time for them to reach the interstate. Then I picked up my phone. "Officer Morrison," I said when he answered, my voice steady. "This is his wife. He just left the state with our children. I have the vehicle description and direction of travel." There was a pause. Then, "You did the right thing." And just like that, the life he thought he was starting began to collapse, mile by mile. I didn't celebrate after I hung up the phone. I didn't pace. I didn't second-guess myself. I stood at the kitchen sink and rinsed a mug that didn't need rinsing, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, grounding myself in something ordinary while everything else tilted. I knew exactly what would happen next. Rules don't bend just because someone believes they should. I waited. 30 minutes became 40. 40 became an hour. The house felt cavernous without the kids' noise, but there was also a strange stillness, like a storm had already passed through and left clarity behind. At 11:47 p.m., my phone rang. "Mrs. Wells," Officer Morrison said. His voice was professional, calm. "We have your husband in custody." I closed my eyes, not in relief, not in triumph, but because the finality of it landed all at once. "They stopped the vehicle about 45 minutes from the state line," he continued. "Clear parole violation." He became combative during the stop. "Your children are safe." "Where are they?" I asked. "Child Protective Services has them temporarily. As the non-offending parent with no criminal record, you can pick them up immediately." I thanked him. My voice didn't crack. When I arrived, it was close to midnight. The CPS worker was kind, careful with her words. She knelt to my children's level, explained that Daddy had to talk to the police because he broke important rules, but Mommy was here now. My son fell asleep in his car seat before we even pulled out of the lot. My daughter stayed awake, silent, staring out the window. "Why did the police take Daddy?" she finally asked. "He broke some rules, sweetheart," I said. "Important ones." "Is he in big trouble?" "Yes," I answered honestly. "Pretty big." She nodded, absorbing that with a maturity that hurt to witness. A few minutes passed before she spoke again, softer this time. "Daddy said we couldn't call you Mommy anymore." My hands tightened on the steering wheel, but my voice stayed level. "No one gets to decide that, ever." She hesitated. "He said she was going to be our new mom." There it was. The rage rose fast, hot, sharp, but I swallowed it before it could reach my voice. Men like him confuse authority with entitlement. They assume replacement is power. "No one replaces me," I said calmly, "and no one takes you away from me." She relaxed back into the seat, reassured. By the time we got home, it was past midnight. I tucked them into bed, stayed until their breathing evened out, then sat alone on the edge of my bed, staring at nothing. I didn't cry. I was angry. I was disappointed. I was resolute. The next morning, my phone exploded. Calls from his mother, voicemails accusing me of betrayal, texts calling me vindictive, heartless, manipulative. One message said I had set him up. No, I had followed the rules. He broke them. By noon, my lawyer confirmed what I already knew. Emergency custody paperwork would be filed immediately. Parole violations don't leave much room for interpretation, especially when minor children are involved. Later that afternoon, he called me from jail. I didn't answer. That night, his mother called again, screaming this time. How could I do this to her son? How could I destroy their family? I listened without interrupting, then said quietly, "He destroyed it when he chose to violate parole and take my children." Then I hung up. The following day, my lawyer called with an update. "He's being held on parole revocation," he said, looking at serving the remainder of his original sentence, 18 months, possibly more, with added charges. I exhaled slowly. This wasn't revenge. This was consequence. While he sat in a holding cell, shocked that charm hadn't saved him, I packed school lunches, scheduled therapy appointments, called my boss to explain I'd need flexibility for a while. Life didn't stop because he imploded. It reorganized around his absence. That was the moment everything shifted, not when he was arrested, not when the cuffs went on, but when I realized something profound. I wasn't reacting anymore. I was leading. The days after his arrest didn't blur together the way trauma usually does. They sharpened. Every sound felt distinct. The click of the front door locking at night, the scrape of chairs in the morning, the weight of my phone in my hand each time it buzzed. Another message, another accusation, another demand for access to children he'd tried to take. I didn't answer most of them. My reaction wasn't explosive, it wasn't theatrical, it was deliberate. I focused on what mattered. The kids woke up early the next morning, as if nothing had changed. Routine is a lifeline for children. I made breakfast, packed lunches, tied shoes. My hands were steady even when my chest felt tight. At school drop-off, my daughter clung to me longer than usual. "Are you coming back?" she asked. "I always come back," I said. That was the truth I could give her. At work, I told my boss only what was necessary. There was no shame in my voice, no apology for needing time. He nodded, offered flexibility. I realized how much emotional energy I'd spent protecting a man who had never protected me. My lawyer called mid-morning. "He's requesting to speak with you," she said. "From jail." "No," I replied immediately. Silence on the other end. Then, "That's wise." Later that day, his girlfriend tried. Unknown number. I let it ring. A voicemail followed. Tight, defensive, rehearsed. She said she hadn't known about the parole. Said she loved the kids. Said this was all a misunderstanding and that I didn't need to make it worse. I deleted it. Women like her mistake access for authority, proximity for legitimacy. That evening, my mother came over with dinner and a calm presence I hadn't realized I needed so badly. She didn't ask questions. She didn't criticize. She folded laundry and listened. "You did the right thing," she said once quietly. I nodded. Hearing it out loud mattered more than I expected. The next morning, his mother showed up at my door unannounced. I didn't invite her in. She stood on the porch, arms crossed, eyes blazing. "You set him up," she said. "You knew what would happen." Yes, I replied evenly. I knew the law. He made a mistake. No, I corrected. He made a choice. Her mouth tightened. You're keeping his kids from him. I'm keeping my children safe, I said. There's a difference. She left furious, threatening court, threatening consequences, threatening things she didn't understand. I closed the door and locked it without shaking. That afternoon, the kids asked when Daddy was coming home. I knelt to their level, steady, honest. He broke important rules. When adults break rules like that, there are serious consequences. Is he mad at you? My daughter asked. Maybe, I said, but that's not your responsibility. That night, after they were asleep, I finally let myself sit with everything I'd been holding back. The betrayal wasn't loud, it wasn't cinematic. It was quiet and corrosive. Months of lies. A plan made behind my back. A belief that he could erase me from my children's lives with a suitcase and a smile. I didn't scream into a pillow. I didn't collapse. I opened my laptop and started documenting. Dates, messages, voicemails, every call from his family, every attempt to contact the kids through third parties, every boundary crossed. This wasn't anger. This was strategy. When my lawyer called the next morning and asked how I was holding up, I surprised myself with the answer. I'm clear, I said. And I meant it, because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't reacting to chaos created by someone else. I was responding to reality, with eyes open, spine straight, and children depending on me, and I wasn't going to fail them. The escalation didn't come from him at first. It came from the people who believed they were entitled to speak for him. The calls started early. His sister, his mother, cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. Different voices, same script. I was cold. I was vindictive. I was using the legal system to punish a man who just wanted to be happy. None of them asked where my children slept that night. None of them asked why he thought it was acceptable to erase their mother. My lawyer advised me to stop answering entirely. Let them talk to me, she said. Anything they say can help us. So I stopped responding and watched the pressure increase. His sister posted online long paragraphs about injustice, about a father ripped from his children, about a wife who weaponized rules. The comments were thin, confused. A few asked questions she didn't want to answer. When someone pointed out the parole violation, the post disappeared within hours. At the same time, he tried again. A collect call from jail, declined. A letter arrived 2 days later. 3 pages, tight handwriting, no apology, no accountability. He said I'd embarrassed him, ruined his future, turned his kids against him. He said I knew how much pressure he was under and should have protected him better. I handed it to my lawyer without reading it twice. She smiled grimly. This helps. The first court hearing came quickly. He appeared in orange, standing straighter than he had any right to. Men like him don't wilt under pressure. They double down. His public defender tried to frame the violation as confusion, claimed he thought verbal permission was enough, claimed it was temporary travel. The prosecutor dismantled it piece by piece. No permission requested, no emergency documented, minor children involved, intent to relocate permanently. Then Officer Morrison testified, clear, factual, unemotional. He described the stop, the resistance, the way my husband tried to block officers from separating him from the kids. That detail made the room shift. When my husband testified, his story changed 3 times. First, he said he didn't know he couldn't leave the state. Then he said he thought he had permission. Finally, he said I tricked him. The judge stopped him. Are you suggesting your wife forced you to leave the state with your girlfriend? He hesitated. No. Did she threaten you? No. Did she encourage you to leave? No. Then explain how she tricked you. He didn't answer. His jaw tightened. His eyes burned, not with shame, but with anger that the performance wasn't landing. Parole was revoked. 18 months minimum, more pending review. After court, his lawyer approached me. He wants to discuss custody. I laughed, not loudly, not cruelly. Just a short breath of disbelief. What custody? I asked. He's going to prison. He still had parental rights, the lawyer said. Supervised visits eventually, if conditions were met. Not until he completes his sentence, I replied, and gets a psychological evaluation. That's harsh. He tried to take my children across state lines while committing a felony, I said. That's restraint. Then the girlfriend surfaced. She showed up at my house the next day, alone, pale, no confidence left. I didn't know, she said quickly, about the parole. Really? I asked calmly. You were planning a life with a man and never asked why he couldn't travel freely? She swallowed. He said it was old stuff, sordid. Did he tell you we were separated? I asked. She looked down. There it was. He told her I was controlling, emotionally abusive, that I controlled the money, that the marriage was over. We'd never discussed separation. I told her one thing: run. She left. I never saw her again. By then, my children had started therapy. Quiet sessions at first, drawings, hesitation. My daughter mentioned something that made my stomach twist. Pills he'd kept hidden. Pills he'd told her were vitamins. Pills she'd been told not to tell me about. That was the moment my restraint hardened into resolve. A parent who teaches a child to keep secrets about drugs doesn't get unsupervised access. Ever. My lawyer documented everything. Therapy notes, letters, voicemails, his family's attempts to pressure me. The escalation wasn't chaotic anymore. It was structural, legal, methodical. And while his world closed in, cells, hearings, restrictions, mine stabilized. Work adjusted. My mother helped. The kids laughed again. He thought leaving me would make him free. Instead, it revealed who had actually been holding everything together. The darkest moment didn't arrive with shouting or slammed doors. It came quietly, folded into an ordinary afternoon, when I realized how much damage had already been done before he ever tried to leave. My daughter came home from therapy holding a crayon drawing. Stick figures, a house, 2 adults on opposite sides of the page. She handed it to me without a word and went to wash her hands. The therapist pulled me aside. "She's processing," she said gently, "but she mentioned something concerning." My chest tightened. "What?" "She said Daddy told her not to tell you about some pills he kept hidden, said they were special vitamins, asked her to keep it secret." The room went very still. I didn't cry. I didn't gasp. I felt something colder settle into place. A parent who asks a child to keep secrets about drugs is not confused. He's manipulative, and he's dangerous in ways that don't show up on police reports. That night, after the kids were asleep, I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the walls. Every memory rearranged itself. His defensiveness, his anger when questioned, the way he'd shut down conversations by accusing me of control. He hadn't just betrayed me. He had put our children in the middle of adult wrongdoing and trained them to protect him. That was the moment I decided, supervised visits only, permanently if necessary. I called my lawyer immediately. She didn't interrupt as I explained. When I finished, she said quietly, "Get it documented. We'll act fast." The next blow came the following morning. A letter from jail. Not to me, to the kids. My lawyer intercepted it before it reached them. She read it aloud in her office, her voice steady while my hands curled into fists. "Daddy is keeping us apart because he's mean. When I get out, we'll run away together. Just the 3 of us. Don't tell him our secret." My heart didn't race. It dropped. An incarcerated man trying to convince children to run away with him. Encouraging secrecy, undermining their sense of safety. That crossed a line you don't come back from. "We're filing for termination of parental rights," my lawyer said. "This gives us a real chance." That night, I sat on the floor outside my children's rooms and listened to them sleep. The rise and fall of their breathing anchored me to reality. I wasn't doing this out of anger. I was doing it because someone had to protect them from a man who no longer recognized boundaries, legal or emotional. The phone calls escalated again. His mother demanded money for his commissary account, demanded visits, demanded forgiveness letters. I stopped responding entirely. Everything went to my lawyer. Then his sister reached out privately. We met for coffee. She looked exhausted, older than the last time I'd seen her. "He's been stealing from our parents," she said quietly. "For years. Legal fees, fake investments. They refinanced their house for him." My stomach clenched. "Why are you telling me this?" "They're planning to go for grandparent rights," she said. "They think you're unfit. They want the kids." I nodded slowly. "Thank you." Another piece added to the file. Then came the DNA test. I hadn't wanted to think about it, but emails uncovered later, messages about a baby, timelines that didn't add up, forced the issue. Waiting for the results was unbearable. I looked at my son and saw myself, his eyes, his laugh, his stubborn focus. But betrayal poisons certainty. When the call finally came and my lawyer said, "He's yours," I had to sit down. Relief hit so hard my vision blurred, not from tears, but from the sheer release of tension I hadn't known I was carrying. Still, it didn't erase what had happened. Infidelity, manipulation, endangerment. And then, the final blow. Another letter from jail. This one was pure delusion. Threats. Blame. God would judge me. He'd get full custody when he got out. He'd make me pay. My lawyer slid it into the file and said, "This shows no remorse, no accountability." I drove home in silence that night, the weight of it pressing in. This was the dark moment. The realization that the man I married didn't just make bad choices, he became someone unsafe. And that meant the fight ahead wouldn't be quick. But it would be final. The turning point didn't arrive with shouting. It didn't come with a dramatic confession or a moment of visible regret. It came quietly, in a conference room, with documents laid out in precise stacks, evidence arranged so clearly that the truth no longer needed my voice to carry it. By then, everything spoke for itself. Police reports from the night he was stopped. Parole violation records, detailing intent to relocate across state lines. The intercepted jail letter telling my children to run away with him. Therapy notes documenting secrecy, fear, and exposure to drugs. Voicemails from his family pressuring me to fix this. His own jail correspondence. Angry, threatening, absent of responsibility. Facts don't argue, they accumulate. The termination hearing happened faster than I expected. He appeared via video again, wearing orange, sitting rigidly upright as if posture alone could restore authority. A court-appointed lawyer sat beside him this time. The good lawyer, the one I'd paid for months earlier, was long gone. His attorney advised him to show remorse, to accept responsibility, to speak calmly about learning from mistakes. He ignored every word. When it was his turn to speak, he launched into a rant about injustice, about how I had stolen his children, about a corrupt system that protected vindictive spouses, about how his girlfriend was his true love, and how everything would be different once he got out. The judge let him finish, then asked one question. Do you take any responsibility for your current situation? He didn't pause. I'm a victim of circumstance, he said, and a vindictive wife. The room went still. The judge didn't raise her voice. She didn't scold. She ruled. Termination of parental rights. Complete severance. No further contact. He began shouting. The audio cut. The screen froze. Court officers removed him from the video room. I didn't react. This wasn't victory. It was closure. 2 weeks after the hearing, I got a call from the prison hospital. There had been an incident inside the facility. Fighting. Medical complications. An internal investigation already underway. What came out of it stunned everyone. He had gotten someone pregnant while in custody. It wasn't the woman he'd left me for. It wasn't anyone from his life on the outside. It involved a guard. Whether it was consensual or coerced was still under investigation. The guard had been arrested. Charges pending. When the baby is born, it will go straight into foster care. His parents called me, frantic, saying the baby was my children's sibling, asking me to take responsibility, asking me to help clean up one more mess he'd created. No, I said. That was the easiest decision I'd made in months. His sister texted me once. I'm done, completely done. Then she blocked everyone and moved across the country. And just like that, the chaos collapsed inward on itself, taking everyone who'd enabled it along the way. Meanwhile, my world stabilized. The kids continued therapy. My daughter made honor roll, my son joined soccer and ran the field like it belonged to him. Their laughter changed, less cautious, more free. I was promoted at work, bought a house in a better school district, took my time rebuilding. No rush, no desperation to replace anything. At the therapist's recommendation, we removed all photos of him from the house, not out of anger, out of healing. On my daughter's birthday, in the middle of balloons and cake and friends, she pulled me aside. I'm happy now, she said. I crouched to her level. You mean today? She shook her head. All the time. It used to be scary when he was here. Now it's not. That was the moment everything truly shifted. Not when the court ruled, not when the truth came out, but when my child felt safe enough to say it out loud. The fallout didn't hit all at once. It arrived in waves. Legal, financial, emotional, each one heavier than the last, all of them consequences he never believed would reach him. The first wave was quiet. My lawyer called to confirm the paperwork had been finalized. Full legal and physical custody granted. No visitation, no contact, no loopholes left open for manipulation. It's airtight, she said. Given everything, this was inevitable. I thanked her and hung up, then sat in my car for a moment longer than necessary. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt settled, like something that had been pressing on my chest for years had finally lifted. The second wave came from his family. His mother showed up in court screaming about injustice, accusing me of stealing grandchildren that belonged to her. She had to be escorted out. After that, the calls stopped, replaced by silence that spoke louder than threats ever had. His sister tried one last time online, another post, another attempt to rewrite reality. This time, people pushed back. So he violated parole, tried to leave the state with the kids, and told them to keep drug secrets? And you think she's the problem? The post vanished within hours. That was the end of public support. Then came the letters. From jail, he was allowed to write, everything routed through my lawyer, page after page of blame. I was heartless. I was cruel. I had destroyed his future. God would judge me. He would get everything back when he got out. My lawyer added them to the file without comment. Every word helps, she said. It shows lack of remorse. The third wave was financial. Without me paying lawyers, without family bailing him out, his resources dried up fast. His parents had refinanced their home to save him before. Now they were facing foreclosure. I heard about it through someone else, never directly. I didn't intervene. Enabling had already cost too many people too much. At work, things changed in ways I hadn't expected. Without constant crisis management, without covering for someone else's chaos, I performed better, clearer, focused. When my promotion came through, it felt earned, not like a consolation prize for surviving something. At home, the kids changed too. Not overnight, healing doesn't work that way, but gradually. My son slept through the night again. My daughter stopped asking if she was allowed to tell me things. The fear receded, not dramatically, but steadily, like water pulling back from shore. Their therapist noticed it first. They're safer now, she said. Not just physically, emotionally. That sentence stayed with me. Months later, I ran into him once, by accident. A hardware store, of all places. He looked smaller, thinner, the confidence gone. Living in a studio, driving an old car. Everything he'd built on entitlement had collapsed. How are the kids? He asked. They're thriving, I said. Exactly where they should be. He nodded, eyes down. I'm sorry, I got played too. We all did, I replied evenly, but we're not the ones in prison. He didn't argue. He just walked away. That night, after the kids were asleep, I sat on the porch and thought about how one sentence, I'm taking the kids to live with my girlfriend, had triggered everything. Parole revoked, freedom gone, parental rights terminated, family fractured, isolation complete. Not because I was cruel, but because I refused to let someone destroy my children's lives to satisfy his entitlement. The fallout wasn't something I caused. It was something he earned. And for the first time since I'd known him, I wasn't standing in the debris trying to clean it up. I was standing on solid ground, watching the dust settle behind me. The last chapter didn't end in court. It ended at home, on an ordinary night, with homework spread across the table, backpacks by the door, and laughter drifting down the hallway, unforced, unguarded, real. That was how I knew we were free. My children don't ask about him anymore. Their therapist says they've processed the loss in the healthiest way possible, not by forgetting, but by understanding that safety matters more than biology. We removed the last traces of him from our home because healing needs space, not reminders. I kept my promises. It's never going to be scary again, I told my daughter once. I know, she said. You always keep your promises. I thought about that later, alone, realizing how much weight those words carried. I didn't ruin his life. I refused to let him ruin ours. There's a difference. Consequences aren't cruelty. Boundaries aren't punishment. And protecting your children is never vindictive, no matter how loudly someone insists it is. He believed rules were suggestions. He believed charm would save him. He believed he could take whatever he wanted and walk away untouched. He was wrong. The truth is, sometimes the trash really does take itself out. You don't have to chase it. You don't have to explain it. You just have to be strong enough to close the door and not look back. We're not angry anymore. We're peaceful. And peace is the real ending, the kind you don't have to defend. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever had to choose between keeping the peace and protecting what matters most, know this. You are not wrong for choosing yourself or your children. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for sharing this journey with us. If you found value in this story, please like, comment, and subscribe to support the channel. Your engagement helps us keep telling real stories about resilience, accountability, and quiet strength. Until next time, choose safety, choose truth, and never apologize for refusing to accept chaos as love.